All right. It's about 2 o'clock. Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started. Just want to say thank you to everyone for joining our webinar today, How to Effectively Manage Remote Employees. Before we begin, I just want to let you know that we will have some time at the end for Q&A at the end of the webinar. Please feel free to submit questions as we move along, and we'll get to as many as possible. I want to start by telling you a little bit about myself. My name is Chris Ramirez, Vice President of Sales here at Simpatico. I joined Simpatico in October of last year, and I bring to the team and the company 15 years of leadership experience in various roles in sales, operations, business services. Also have some previous background in telecom. I really enjoy volunteering with nonprofits. I sit on different boards. I really love giving back to the community. It's one of my passions. And I also enjoy coaching my son's flag football team. I'm a proud Texas Tech alumni, and I recently graduated from a Leadership Lubbock course. Presenting today with me is my colleague, Corey Ruthert, and I'm going to hand it off to Corey now.
Hey, Chris, thank you for that. So my name is Corey Ruthart. I've been with Simpatico for a little over 7 years now, focusing primarily on business consulting and leadership in the role of Executive Vice President and CIO. I've been working primarily with small and medium business, some large enterprise as well. And I've got multiple certifications in various technologies and security with CISSP, CCISO, MCSE, MCSA, just kind of that alphabet soup of everything. I've been in technology for the last 18 years and spent over a decade in a senior leadership role. And Chris, the topic we're talking about today is really something that I'm very passionate about, something that I've written about several times. I've got a couple of those articles published in Forbes for people to look at later on.
Thanks, Corey. So yes, today we do have 4 topics for the webinar. First is communication rhythms, managing expectations, and the next part, focusing on outcomes, not activities. That's one that I really want. If you have any takeaways from today, this is going to be a good section. And also, of course, to take advantage of technology. I know that Simpatico here, we have lots of communications that we emphasize every day. So Corey, tell us a little bit more about communication rhythms.
Sure, thanks, Chris. Communication rhythms are really the backbone of a successful team. And we do this every day with daily and weekly huddles. What we found is that quick 10 to 15 minute huddles are really powerful. A short huddle every day should give you a 5x to a 10x return on the 15 minutes that it takes for that. And whether that's emails that you don't have to send or to read, conversations that you don't need to have, the whole point of the huddles is really to make sure that everyone is spending their time wisely. And when we do this, we really are asking ourselves 3 basic questions. Are they doing the one thing that's going to move the quarterly theme forward? Are they going too fast or too slow relative to everyone else that's around them? And if they're stuck on something, how can the rest of the team help them? And those are really the things that we're asking as we go through those meetings. That's how we structure a lot of those daily huddles. And those typically can feel a little bit odd at first, but a quick check-in with direct reports really helps managers to understand what issues their teams are facing, address any of those concerns, and keep those lines of communication open, ensuring that the team has a voice. That's a big part of that remote management communication cycle. So I know that sometimes that can feel taxing for managers, but leaders really need to be seen and heard by their teams. And that I've got a quote on the screen from John C. Maxwell. It's one of my favorite quotes by him. He says that all good leaders are connectors. They relate well and make people feel confident about themselves and their leader. And I know that's really important for what we do at Simpatico. And as we've gone through these remote work scenarios, we've done this for several years now, and that's been a key to our success in this. So Chris, how are you and your daily huddles going in the sales department?
Thanks, Corey. Yes, daily sales huddles, we do it towards the end of the day. They're very, very vital to the success of our team. This is a good day to kind of recap the day, check in on how everyone's doing, and most importantly, talk about successes, best practices, also areas of opportunity. What we've seen is the team sees common objections that we work together to overcome. This is just a good opportunity also to get the temperature of the team. Really encouraging and keeps the energy up. That's important also when working remotely, to keep the energy very high because we're not in person like we were before. So now I want to talk about the next section, which is managing expectations. When we talk about managing expectations, this is really where the rubber meets the road. We want to talk about to set daily, weekly targets for your staff. This is going to be really important to give everyone continued expectations now that we're in a remote setting. KPIs are very important, key performance indicators. It's very important for your organization to make sure to clearly define what those are. How does the company want to be measured? And KPIs can even change in a remote situation from how they were before COVID. So it's really important to have clearly defined KPIs and that your teams are aware of them. Don't just publish them, really explain them to the team. Check for understanding is also key. What you'll find in sometimes with the KPIs is they've been explained, but there's not a true understanding. So always check for understanding, ask for someone to kind of recap it back for you. That's always a good way to ensure that everyone is on the same page. Find a way to track them in a highly visible way. I know we'll talk a little bit later, what we use different dashboards in sales and in our operations, and Corey's going to talk about some of those a little bit later, but those are also going to be another way to measure the performance. When we can talk about one of the customers that we were able to help with KPIs, we led a discussion with the manufacturing customer about KPIs and how it would have an impact on their organization. The leadership team, however, was split. You had some of the leadership team that didn't necessarily think, the KPIs were significant, and some just that didn't want to really invest the time in developing the KPIs. We were able to work with the floor managers and identify key issues and how to manage them. We built the KPIs around the critical numbers that were identified by the organization. And the good news here, folks, this led to a 40% increase in production. The manager in section 1 didn't know how manager in section 3 was impacted by output, only managing to section 2 requirements. So these are the different miscommunications that we were able to identify by creating the critical number and the KPIs. And of course, the visibility is key. So now that you've identified KPIs, how are you measuring them? How are they visible? Literal visual images, dashboards, so people can see their progress and know how to succeed. This is important to not only identify areas of opportunity, but more importantly, to manage and recognize successes, especially in a remote environment. People need that human element, that energy, that emotion of success goes a long way when it's visible through KPI dashboards. Use team goals to drive the peer accountability. That's a big motivator of a dashboard. We know in management, maybe the team may not want to work as hard for certain leaders, but I promise you, an effective team always will work hard not to let their peers down. So this is a powerful motivator when you have these visual dashboards. Nobody wants to let the team down. And we can show you an example here. This is an example of a KPI of just a financial dashboard. As you can see, there's different varying measures and different ways that you can see, financial profit, loss. I mean, this keeps everybody on the same goal. Looking here, and this is a very generic example, but it shows an income statement. But how these KPIs are tied into a live goal of what the team is pursuing is always important, because we all know in order to achieve a metric, everyone has to be on the same page. Everybody has to know exactly where everything is going, with that. All right, so now I'm going to hand it off over to Corey, and he's going to talk a little bit more about outcomes, not activities.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. When we talk about KPIs and how that really impacts an organization, I think that sometimes we lose sight of the bigger goal. And I think at Simpatica, we've done a really good job of that. We focused on outcome-based results. And this means that we take really a holistic approach to problem solving. So whether it's a technical issue or a business consulting challenge, we really look at the big picture and take the context of that situation into account. And that's very different than looking at just activity and measuring activity. And typically when people are looking at KPIs, They're just measuring small pieces of activity. One of the things that we found is that when staff are focused on activity, they focus on really just staying busy, which is not what we need as an organization. When they're focused on outcomes, they're looking at achievements and attaining results. And that's a big change. That's a complete mind shift from looking at trying to accomplish things where you're looking at specific tasks. And maybe you're tracking as a KPI the number of tickets that somebody completes or the number of leads that somebody generates. Instead of changing your mindset from looking at those activities to really focusing on the outcome, you have a way different perspective there. And that's where we've seen a lot of success for business. So when you focus on those outcomes, I typically think about what does the business really need? What do they want? What are the outcomes that need to be driven? And there are two names that really come to mind when I think about my own leadership and management style and how that's been influenced. And that's Peter Drucker and John C. Maxwell. They're both fantastic books out there, really great resource for learning. I had a quote just a minute ago from John Maxwell. This one I really like from Peter Drucker. And he says, effective leadership is not about making speeches or being liked. Leadership is defined by results, not attributes. And I love that perspective. That really reinforces that outcome desire. As leaders, we are the ones that are responsible for delivering the outcome for the business and helping our teams to be successful in doing that. So just as we did before, setting those clear goals, like we talked about in KPIs, for each team or person, holding them accountable, that's how we get there. On this next slide, we look at extending that KPI type of idea into something that we call OKR. So that's objectives and key results. Sometimes you'll have people throw in initiatives in there as well, but OKR is what we typically refer to that as. And the three components of that, objectives, key results, and initiatives, break it down so you're not having just a KPI and looking at an outcome. You're looking at both leading indicators, lagging indicators, and then the overall outcome that you want to obtain. So objectives are a description of the outcome. Key results are the lagging indicators, and those are typically the KPIs that we talk about. And then your initiatives are the leading indicators for that. And an example of that I put on this slide, you can see this is something where you would be looking at a product-based approach, but objective might be to become the most loved product in our category. And the key results that you want to measure if you've done that are based on the Net Promoter Score, that NPS, at a 9.5 or above, retention rate for your customers at 90%, looking at some other key results. Typically, we recommend 3 to 5 key results and initiatives per objective. And then the initiatives that would help build those initiatives are what you're going to do right now as, again, that leading indicator. Create an FAQ, frequently asked questions, to help customers really adopt the platform, adopt whatever package you're trying to deliver. Build in-app live chat is one of the examples in here to really, again, lead that customer engagement, help that adoption rate. And you can see how those initiatives, key results, all tie back to a specific objective for the company. And when we look at this in the lens of remote work in the scenario that we find ourselves today, that has a very profound impact. A lot of times, especially as leaders, we want to be able to see what our employees are doing. And now instead of being able to walk down the hall and see exactly what they're doing, we're having to trust and to delegate a lot more responsibility to them. We can't track every single interaction. And so I urge you to fight that hesitation and try and avoid the micromanagement as much as you can, and really lead by trying to hit outcomes and tracking those KPIs and not focusing so much on the activity. I think you'll have much more success in the outcome. So Chris, I know sometimes this seems like some pretty operational approaches, but how do you practice outcome-based management on even the sales side of the business?
That's a great question, Corey. We all know sales is all about outcomes, right? Each sales professional has their different style, and their activities will always reflect that. We use the activity that the sales reps perform as an indicator. This is a metric of how you're doing, how many quotes per day, how many customer meetings, how many phone calls, how many customer contacts. However, closing the sale is the ultimate measure of outcome. We can manage different metrics, but ultimately we look at the outcome of the result. So that's really important to focus on the outcome, not the activity. We've had many success stories where implementing KPIs have been a big impact for customers. just want to let you guys know if you want to learn more about those, you can see some examples for yourself. Check out simpaticosystems.com or kpidashboards.com. They have some great ideas on KPIs for many different industries. So now I want to switch over. Let's talk about taking advantage of technology. We've really gone through quite a bit of information today. When businesses are looking at managing team and delivering performance metrics or KPI reporting, what's the best way for them to accomplish that, Corey?
Yeah, I think technology is a great way for us to accomplish that. Obviously the collaboration tools like we're using today, whether it's Zoom or Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, there's some great platforms out there that offer video collaboration, and that's really designed for a couple of things. Number one, ease of use, ease of communication, but really that video collaboration helps to reinforce those relationships. A lot of times we overlook what that means to help build our teams when you don't have the face-to-face interaction and you can't actually have the natural collaboration you do in an office environment. Remotely, it becomes really important to reinforce those. And many of these tools are free right now. I know that Microsoft Teams has a 6-month trial out there for all of their customers. Any potential customer can sign up for that, work with a partner, or do it directly online. And that definitely helps to facilitate a lot of the daily huddles, weekly huddles, those types of things, but also a way for you to be able to publish your information. So when we talk about things like business intelligence and dashboards, that's definitely a way to communicate that to your teams, whether you're doing it through meetings or you're publishing directly to a web page that people have access to. There are a lot of business intelligence tools that are available with some pre-built content. There are even some tools out there for building your own KPIs. You can use things like Sisense, Yellowfin, Power BI. There are a ton of those different softwares out there. And there's also some software that's specific to your own software with pre-built things. There are third-party tools for QuickBooks, Sage, Dynamics, Salesforce, all of those different platforms where you can take advantage of industry standard type of measurements and KPIs to help get you on track. So with that, multiple platforms are available. We always recommend, you can start on your own or you can reach out to a consultant to help build and develop those, but feel free to ask questions, reach out for help. That's a big component to helping be able to work remotely. And Simpatico has some great tools available, including some custom dashboards for options, maybe where a pre-built dashboard can't accomplish the task, or there are just some things that really, maybe you've got a lot of data sets or you've got information in 3 or 4 different places and you want to be able to consolidate all of that to one place. There are a lot of options out there like that.
All right, thank you, Corey. So now the fun part here, we have some great questions lined up and we're going to get to as many as we can. This first question, it's a good question, Corey. I've actually heard lots of mixed reviews from people who have transitioned into working remotely for the first time, and both on the management level and on the employee level. Corey, this question is for you. How can I assume my people are doing the job, and should I monitor them?
Yeah, that's a question that we actually hear quite a bit, and there's a lot that goes into that question, from a privacy standpoint to a policy standpoint. There's a lot that you want to address in there, and I think as we get more and more into the remote work and work from home type of scenarios that a lot of companies have been forced into, a lot of those HR questions start coming up. I saw another question just a few minutes ago from I believe Tim online. Asking about what type of what type of requirements do we need to have for people who are working from home? Is the employer required to set them up with any type of ergonomic requirements? And I think a lot of those HR questions really tie together. And the default stance is the same HR policies that applied in the office apply at home. Obviously, you can't control those environments. But the reasonable accommodation clause and a lot of HR laws, depending on your local laws, really are subject to interpretation by the company as long as you can defend those. And I think that as you're going through those, we've seen a lot of companies that will offer some type of a stipend to help with some of those policies. But when it comes to monitoring and looking at what people are doing, there are a lot of technology solutions out there for that too. Once you get over those HR and policy type questions. I know at Simpatico we have a couple of different tools like Work Examiner that can go onto a computer and give you some ideas of active time, what people are doing, how much time they're spending in, for instance, Outlook or maybe Excel versus browsing web pages, and even what types of web pages that people are going to. But again, in that work from home scenario, you may have employees that are using their own personal computers, and so there's some barriers there to being able to track some of that as well. So there's a lot of different solutions out there, and definitely some great ways that you can take advantage of that.
Yeah, and just to thanks, Corey. Fantastic. Just to tie into that, don't lose sight of managing your people. I know it's different when they're not physically in front of you. Corey and I had a chat about this a few days ago. You'll spend more resource and time spinning your wheels micromanaging people than if you just did the job yourself. You have to go back to trusting your employee, trusting your team to get the job done. And that's why these KPIs come in. Are we following, the key performance indicators to make sure that the job is done? And this will give your employees that feeling of trust and value that you'd want in the office as well as in a remote environment. So just a big takeaway. Like I said, I've heard different feedback from different leaders, different employees, and that feeling you don't want your team to have. You want them to feel valued and that they're still contributing even though we're in a different environment. Next question, I have another one for you here, Corey. This is a good one. Can Simpatico create these dashboards for my company?
Absolutely. So we talked about that a little bit at the end of the last slide. Simpatico can create dashboards. Again, there are a lot of pre-built things out there, and oftentimes what we'll recommend is using one of the predefined dashboards that's already out there for your software. But certainly there are times where that really doesn't fit the bill. With Simpatico, we're all about creating the right solution for you, not necessarily what works best for us, but really what fits the business, what really fills that need. And a lot of times there are just platforms that don't work, or some that don't cover everything you need. So we can do pre-built dashboards, or we can build custom dashboards at Simpatico. And we've got some pretty neat things out there that we can help you with, depending on what you're looking for in that. So, hey, Chris, I do see a question here that looks like it's about sales. We'll let you take that one. It's, do you publish sales KPI results to the entire staff? How do you handle that?
That's a great question. Yes, yes, that is something that we recently created a dashboard that integrates with our CRM tool, which we use Microsoft Dynamics. The beauty of this tool is it gives a live dashboard of activities. So this is going to show weekly, monthly, quarterly activities all the way down up to the daily. And it'll show how many, for example, in a sales environment, quotations would be a big, is one of the KPIs that we look at. So we're looking at how many quotes per day are being produced. Also, we can track the status. Are those quotes won? What percentage of those quotes are won? And more importantly, even the lost opportunities. So these KPIs and dashboards can begin to help you formulate mathematical equations when looking at, the mystery of how a sale closed. You'll begin to start seeing different trends and different commonalities in, a sale that started from this time, ultimately ended in X result. Also, you'll identify different trends within, different industries. For example, X industry right now may be suffering, due to COVID or extenuating circumstances. We can see those trends in the loss and the reason for. So, that's, again, the KPIs are very important to publish. We do that because we want everyone to see the hard work the sales folks are putting in, and of course I say that with no bias, but we all know sales is tough work, and we want to make sure that our team's hard work is recognized, but more importantly, that the KPIs align with the ultimate company goal. And that kind of ties in to another question here. Corey, it's where do we start if we don't have any KPIs right now? That's kind of a common question I hear is, where to start. Can you talk a little bit on that, Corey?
For sure. There are a lot of resources out there online. And Chris, you mentioned a couple of great ones. We've got simpaticosystems.com. There's some great information on our website around that. But there's also some information that you can find online. There's a few out there. We talked about kpidashboards.com. It's another great resource that has industry specific things. So whether you're in retail, healthcare, finance, some professional services, there are a lot of different industry breakdowns that will help define KPIs that are more relevant to you specifically. We showed a dashboard earlier that was for a finance dashboard. We like finance to explain KPIs and dashboards because I think that really does a good job of speaking common language to multiple industries, multiple people. It's very relatable. Everyone has to deal with that. But that dashboard is just an aggregate of all the different things that we're tracking, all the information that goes into it. And that type of information that's common to finance, you'll find in a lot of other industries as well. So definitely reach out to a couple of those different websites and online resources. If you still need some guidance, feel like you don't have a good handle on it, we have experts in multiple industries that can help with that, whether it's any of those that we listed, healthcare, retail, manufacturing. We're in almost every vertical, so we've got a lot of experience there. And I see another question here that popped up. Someone asked, what is a dashboard? And a dashboard is exactly that. It's just a way of putting all of those different statistics and measurements together into a single view. So for this one that we're looking at with that financial profit and loss KPI dashboard, these are all the things that we want to look at, kind of a single pane of glass, to know what is the health of that department or of that business function. So for finance, we're looking at aging, we're looking at profit, we're looking at profit per number of units, number of tickets or interactions, and then the income statement that gives us the overall hard numbers. And that's really just the function of a dashboard, is to get all of those statistics aggregated into one, and that definitely helps. Right, and I see one more question here. So Chris, we've got a question here. What is the best way to motivate your team working remotely?
That's actually a really good question, Corey. Very common. So it's utilizing the technology like we talked about today, but just to give the simple answer, you got to keep energy with your folks. Phone calls. We can get really easily fall into the trap of just chatting, just emailing. I know like our CEO always says, hey, turn on your video so we can see you. That human element is very, very important, especially when working remote and when working to continually motivate people. People are also, some people prefer the remote environment, but they still want some sort of human interaction. It's important to have that direct eye contact, even using technology. Like we utilize Microsoft Teams for everything. So a good way to keep people motivated, hey, give them a call, look them in the eye to tell them, hey, good job, thank you, appreciate all your hard work. And, pick up the phone and in video, those are really, really key elements to keeping people continually motivated, especially because you can get caught up in, the everyday getting used to just chats and emails and no human interaction. So that's my 2 cents there on motivating the team.
Absolutely, and we've got several more questions that have come in. I don't think we'll get to all of them, but we'll pick one more here. So we have a question from Mark. What type of strategies do you recommend or have used to change the mindset of the normal quantitative aspects, such as help desk tickets closed, to a more outcome-based solution? I love that question. There are a ton of different things that you can do to get users and to get technicians and employees out of that mindset. I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have remotely, is making that transition to outcome-based. The biggest part of that is communicating what you want that outcome to be and explaining to the team what that bigger picture is. If they understand what we're trying to accomplish or how we're trying to do that, I think that's really the best approach, and that's really the first step toward getting that outcome base that we want. I know a lot of times that's pretty difficult to do, but that's really kind of where we start with that is number one, having a common theme that we're all pulling toward, working toward the same outcome, and then empowering those users or those technicians to be able to make those decisions to help lead that. And I think we're just about out of time.
Yeah, I just want to just add one thing there, Corey, to tie onto that from you. We've utilized dashboards at Simpatico. We've utilized the right KPIs in a remote environment. Just really quickly, what kind of statistical improvement have you seen in production?
Absolutely, it's hard to gauge some of those in a couple of scenarios. I know that at Simpatico, we've actually led 7 acquisitions over 6 years, so we've had a great opportunity, a pretty unique opportunity to walk into organizations that we work intimately with and to see the change in how those processes happen. I know that we've seen a little over 30 to 40% increase in productivity and outcome just by introducing KPIs and making it relevant so that the technicians and the people that are doing the work actually can see what's happening. That layer of abstraction so they can see and focus on the bigger picture definitely helps to drive those outcomes.
Great. Thanks, Corey. Well, I just want to once again thank everyone for joining our webinar today. If you have questions, please reach out to us at simpaticosystems.com. We'll try to get to the rest of these questions. Also, good news, be sure to check out next week, next Thursday at 2 p.m. We're going to have another webinar, and this one's going to be covering the cloud and its fundamental security with Jeremiah Cohen, our CISO, and Pepper Campbell. So next Thursday at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. Again, just like to thank everyone for your time, and it was a pleasure working with everyone today. Thank you.
Call me baby if you need a friend. I just wanna give you love. Come on. Reaching out to you, so take a chance. No matter where you go, no, you're not alone. I'm only one call away. I'll be there to save the day. Superman got nothing on me. I'm only one call away. Come along with me and don't be scared. I just wanna set you free. Come on. You and me can make it anywhere. And for now, we can stay here for a while. Cause you know, I just wanna see you smile. No matter where you go, you know you're not alone. I'm only one call away. I'll be there to save the day. Superman got nothing on me. I'm only one call away. And when you're weak, I'll be strong. I'm gonna keep holding on. Now don't you worry, it won't be long, darling. When you feel like hope is gone, just run into my arms. I'm only one call away. I'll be there to save the day. Superman got nothing